Okay, so let's start with this disclaimer. I'm not entirely convinced that it makes any difference, but what the heck, let's just go with it. I'm a true crime channel. My videos are for educational purposes and for adults only. I don't do clickbait. I don't do live streams. My videos are pre-recorded videos where I talk about current cases. In this video, I'm talking about the Jennifer Soto case. For anyone who may have actually not heard of it, Jennifer Soto was a 13-year-old girl who went missing only a few days after her birthday in 2024. It was later discovered that her mother's ex-boyfriend was responsible. And now he's locked up, facing 2 trials, one because of images found on his phone, and one for Maddie's death. Okay, so just to start with, I'm just going to ask anyone who's new to my channel, if you like what you hear, can you please subscribe to my channel? I'm keen to see my subscriber count grow. I'd love to reach 5,000 subscribers. I watch the bigger channels that do live streams grow much faster than me, and I do feel limited because I'm not comfortable doing live streams by myself because I get too distracted. So that does limit the growth of my channel. So I'm so grateful for every new subscriber that comes by. I also just, and I've said this so many times this week, but I just want to thank everyone for their support in every way. All the lovely comments, all the super thanks, all the buy me a coffee. These are the things that help me to push on and come back for more, even when YouTube is just being a pain in the proverbial. Now, I do feel like I'm chasing my tail a bit. I've got a list of other videos talking about Maddie that I want to do, but I also just feel that now is a good time to keep looking at these various interviews. When I was covering the February 28th interview with Jen Soto, somebody asked me if I would consider doing the derivative use interview now that we've had all these phone calls and now that we've had these unredacted interviews released. And I thought, well, originally I thought, yeah, I'll just do that one. But then I thought, actually, from memory, I don't think I've done a full analysis of this video interview that was done with Detective O'Malley. And I think it would be good to look at it based on what we've now looked at in the other interviews and what we've looked at in the jail calls, because I think there's probably we're going to see things in a different light, perhaps. And also, we've done Spotlight on Detective Tagler, and Detective O'Malley is the other standout in this case, so why not? Now, before we get to that, some of you may have seen a recent live stream done by Grizzly, or if you live in Florida, you may even have seen the news. But apparently, in Florida, they have busted a major exploitative images ring. It's so hard trying to figure out the right words to say. And it's a worldwide ring, and they're talking like hundreds of thousands of images. I think one of the detectives said that he had on a particular chat site or wherever it was, he was told that for $100 he could get, I think they said, 1 million images, which is just mind-blowing. It puts that 30,000 images of Stearns's, just makes that sound really itty-bitty. But it also provides some explanation of how he had so many images. What I found interesting was that there were 2 people in the Tampa Bay area who were arrested. And we know the Tampa Bay area is around Northport. So it makes you wonder if there were connections, especially because apparently all this started coming together in July of last year. We know that Chris Stearns handed in a USB in April of last year with all those images. Now, the detectives claimed that they were just, online looking at stuff and just stumbled onto it. But I'd imagine if they had other sources that they wouldn't want to give them away. So they're probably not about to dump some 74-year-old senior in it and say that they basically got a tip-off because of a USB handed in by a 74-year-old man. That would be extremely risky, given that it is an international ring and probably worth lots and lots of money. But I did find that particularly interesting and couldn't help wondering, given that there have been these dribs and drabs of arrests in the Florida area ever since Stearns' arrest, I can't help wondering if there's stuff going on in the background connected to all those images that were on that USB. So, moving on from that, this is, of course, a particularly lengthy interview, and the general consensus is that you guys don't object to me waffling so much in these interviews. So this could take 2 or 3 videos to cover. Now, I will pre-warn you, at some point in time, I will have 2 Chihuahua pups here in the house, meaning that there may be some craziness in the background. And while I do try and pause when they're at their most insane level of disruptive, if I don't push on, then I don't get my videos out. So, and I know that a lot of you like the sound of their craziness in the background. It's just when it starts getting barky and too noisy that I know that it is a problem for some people. So I will do my best to avoid the worst of that, but I will pre-warn you that there could be puppy noises later on in this video and quite possibly in tomorrow's video, because my sister's Chihuahua is actually going to be having a sleepover while she heads down to Melbourne for a concert. So with that said, let's just jump in to part 1 of my review of this Jennifer Soto video interview.
My name's Kevin. I work for the Orange County Sheriff's Office. I'm with Detective Smallwood from Kissimmee. The goal, obviously, Kissimmee Police Department's doing most of this investigation. We're at the Orange County Sheriff's Office. Our people, we have resources out there, obviously doing active search. So it's kind of a joint effort. So Detective Smallwood's we're going to go read through the timeline of everything else. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we're going to go from there. All right.
You want me to go through the whole timeline?
Yeah, we'll start with Sunday. Take me through Sunday.
Okay. Sunday. Do you guys have tissue?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, grab some. So actual tissues?
That'll work.
I can give you this whole roll.
I just don't buy this emotional crap at the start of this video. Yeah, she's had a few minutes to sit there and be in her own head. which is when you would expect a reaction from a parent. But at the same time, this is so short-lived. And when you look at the rest of the interview, none of it seems to happen at the right places. And you all know what I'm talking about.
So Sunday, birthday party. She spent the whole day at my mom's house. They celebrated with the whole family. I was at work. I just started a new job last week or the week before.
Okay. Where's that at?
Walt Disney World at Coronado Springs, front desk concierge.
Okay.
Okay, so I went with the magnifier because I wanted to see if her facial expressions actually matched this supposed distress that she's showing. You have this affected voice that she puts on that, to be honest, just drives me nuts. I think it is probably something that she has developed over the years and thinks that it works. I will, however, note that you did see the scrunched up brow through part of what she was saying. But did you notice when it scrunched up? It scrunched up when she's talking about Maddie spending the entire day at Yolanda's and having a party at Yolanda's. So, to me, that says that possibly she's now feeling guilty about it, or maybe there's a bit of jealousy because they've put all that attention on Maddie. But either way, there's something about Maddie having the day at Yolanda's that is perhaps a little bit distressing for Jen. And maybe it is. Maybe people in the family have commented to her about the fact that she couldn't be bothered fixing her work shift around Maddie's 13th birthday. Because we all know how important 13th birthdays are for teenagers. It could also be that she had an argument with Maddie over it because it would have been important to Maddie. Note also, though, there's no sign of these tears here.
I was finishing up my last day of, no, it wasn't even my last day of training. I was still in the middle of training. Sunday in the middle of training, I couldn't miss to go to her birthday party. So I went to work. I was with my family all day. She had the best day. She was so happy when I got home and I saw her.
Okay, so those of you who have followed my channel for a while know my thoughts on the Sunday night. I don't believe that Jen saw Maddie on the Sunday night. I don't know what the explanation would be because based on the information we had, Maddie would have still been alive because it had to have been after midnight based on rigour and everything like that. But I definitely don't believe that she saw Maddie on Sunday night. And there's a really interesting bit of wording here. She's talking about Maddie being super happy, which we've all questioned because we know that her friends said she was upset because of people not turning up to her party, because of not getting a lot of gifts, because she didn't get as much money as she wanted, and because her mother didn't go to her birthday. So, can't help questioning this whole she was happy. But she said, when I got home, when I saw her, that's a bit of a redundant statement. When I saw her, she's saying she was so happy, which would imply that you saw her, but she has to add that in. when I got home, when I saw her. Like, she has to emphasise the fact that she saw her when she got home. And, you know, the deal, when people give too much information, you've got to ask why. And when they give redundant information that should be a given, you've got to ask why.
At my house around 8:30 that night. I wasn't home. She got dropped off alone. About 10 to 15 minutes later, Stefan showed up.
Okay, so you've also, a lot of you, heard my thoughts on Stefan showing up 15 minutes later. It just seems far too convenient. And when you look at the cell phone data, the tower connections and everything, he came from the opposite direction that he should have come from. And my speculation was that basically he was possibly stalking out Yolanda's house and waiting for Stephanie to drop Maddie off before heading to the townhouse. Waiting 15 minutes would make sense because there's 2 entrances to the complex. Obviously, you would expect Stephanie to go out the back entrance because that is closer towards where she lives. But I would imagine that he wanted to make sure that he didn't cross paths with her along the way, even though he wasn't in his car, but he was in his father's car. I can imagine him being the sort of sneaky person that would do everything in his power not to be seen. Why am I saying this right now? Because Jen refers to Maddie being dropped off alone. Well, who else would she be dropped off with? Because you weren't with her. Again, it's a redundant statement. And it makes me wonder why it is important to point out that she was dropped off alone. Is it because the plan was for Stefan to turn up after Maddie had been dropped off? Because we know that the family don't approve of Stefan. So by turning up after Maddie was dropped off, they wouldn't know he was there.
At your house in Kissimmee?
At my house in Kissimmee, he called me. Or he texted me, I don't remember. But he let me know he was there and that she was getting ready for bed. She was doing her routine. So she took her nighttime meds and she got in the shower to get ready for bed.
Why the need to report on her every move? Why even the need to let Jen know that he arrived? Because she would have figured that out when she got home. I mean, I guess probably that side of it I get. But really, why did Jen need reassurance that Maddie had taken her meds and was having her shower and everything? She was like 13. She was more than capable of getting herself ready for bed, of doing things that were her normal routine.
What meds? What does she take?
She takes hydroxyzine.
Okay. What is it for?
It's for anxiety and for sleep.
Okay.
Now, could she take that by herself, or would he have given that to her?
I think she took it by herself. She got home and she had already taken it.
How do you know that?
That's what he told me.
That's what he told you. Okay.
So it is impossible to maintain fake emotion. And you'll notice that she's slipped out of all of that now. She's even starting to lose the affected voice. But there's a few things I need to comment on here. Now, I have done a video on this, but it does my head in that she had her daughter on hydroxyzine. Because that is a psychotropic drug, meaning that it actually passes through the blood-brain barrier and has an effect on the brain. Children, their brains don't develop to their full size until after they are 14. And then they are still developing and everything well into adulthood, up until about 26. They have done studies that show that children who have been given hydroxyzine periodically, not permanently, but periodically for allergies, that it has had an effect on their brains. And yet this child was apparently having it every night. It's so irresponsible. Now, moving on from that, they're asking about her meds, and Jen says, I think she took it by herself. And they ask her, how do you know? And you get this really, really long pause. We know that either the answer is going to be an outright lie, or it's going to be something where she can't figure out how to get around answering it without looking bad. Given the long pause, I suspect that the answer was a lie based on what she said afterwards, because she says he told her that. Either it is a lie and she's got no idea, or he's told her something else. Either way, it's definitely a red flag that you get the long pause and the quiet voice, her saying, he told me that. So I don't even think Jen knows if Maddie had meds that night or what sort of meds Maddie had.
He was there when you got home? You got home, they were already at the apartment? Okay.
I don't like her taking her meds without somebody visually seeing, watching her, because I don't want her to accidentally grab the wrong pill. She's comfortable enough to grab the pill by, but I'm like, no, I need to watch you take them.
Has there ever been an issue with that in the past, where you took too many or took the wrong thing? Or
No.
just like a thought in your mind?
No, just a thought in my mind, just me being hypervigilant.
Sure, Jen, you're such a hypervigilant parent, aren't you? Now, I honestly think that Maddie would have been responsible enough to take her meds on her own. And based on what we know, she would have been safer to take her meds on her own. We know that Jen's lying or just having a convenient memory lapse because there was that text message from about 12 months earlier where she questioned Stefan about Maddie's meds and he admitted that he'd given her an extra dose, which I suspect probably wasn't the full truth there, and he probably gave her an extra dose of something, but not of her regular meds. The fact that Jen, after that occurrence, would then trust Stefan to be around when Maddie takes her meds and expect Stefan to be the one responsible as opposed to Maddie just does my head in. I would never. Obviously I don't have children, but if I did have children and someone had pulled a stunt like him, I would never again trust them to have anything to do with administering my child's medications. And I would imagine that that would be the situation with most parents. And yet she's quite accepting of it here. She trusts him more than Maddie. Honestly, I can't with this woman sometimes.
I want to physically watch her take her meds and watch her grab two, take them. I don't ever want there to be an accident of she took too many or she took. My biggest fear is that she would take Adderall by accident, her daytime meds.
Got it.
Okay, so on one hand, yeah, I get that it would be problematic for a child to take Adderall before bed because they wouldn't sleep. That said, it appears that the Adderall and the hydroxyzine, in terms of interactions, are probably okay. So you could probably still administer the hydroxyzine. Not that I'm in favour of hydroxyzine in the first place. But that's really the worst scenario you can think of, that your child takes Adderall before bed and then can't sleep. Is that because she would keep you awake and this is about you? Because my biggest concern would have been her accidentally taking too much hydroxyzine. And I would expect that to be Jen's biggest concern, given the story we've heard about her having to ring poison control one time because she couldn't wake Maddie up. And Stefan admitted that he gave Maddie an extra dose. So she knows the consequences of too much hydroxyzine. And they certainly sound more dangerous than too much Adderall. It's just weird to get that from her.
I got home around 10:30. I started getting ready for bed myself. I started eating and taking my meds because I have to take meds. When I went to take my meds, I realized, oh my god, I forgot to take my Saturday night's meds, which is why I felt so weird and so abnormal and not myself Sunday while I was at work. Everyone at work noticed I was acting different and not being myself. Like I couldn't smile in front of the guests. I felt this wave of depression that I hadn't felt in years. It was my bipolar symptoms coming up again that I've been medicating myself for all this time.
First of all, she is seriously over-explaining there. She is really, really trying to sell that story to the detectives. She's just going too far, in my opinion. To me, it sounds like she is basically making it up. The other issue I have is the story we have from her and Stefan is that when she takes her meds of a night, she only has so much time before those meds kick in, and then she's out cold. And now she's saying she only noticed on Sunday night that she'd forgotten to take her meds. If you are someone who relies on meds to get sleep, then you're going to realise when you're lying there at 1 o'clock in the morning wide awake that you missed your meds. Given she was working a later shift, it would have been perfectly fine as far as I can see, to take her meds a little bit later and still get a bit of sleep. She doesn't say, I missed my meds so I got no sleep Saturday night. She never brings up any issue of not having enough sleep on the Saturday nights. It's about, oh, I was acting odd at work. The issue there, of course, is that when you're talking about something like bipolar, you're not going to see a drastic impact of missing one round of medication. It is something that accumulates in your system. It takes several months to get a balance happening with these sorts of drugs, because it does have to sort of get into your system. It's not like taking a Panadol and half an hour later it works. So this whole story about not being right at work and people noticing that she wasn't right and blah, 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 bullcrap. Maybe you might feel a little bit fuzzy, but it's not going to impact you to the extent where people are going to notice. Not unless you're standing there all day and going, oh, I feel funny. I forgot to take my meds. I feel funny. But that's not what she's saying. She's trying to claim that she plunged into this major bipolar pit just for missing one round of medication, which is a complete, utter load of BS.
I realized I forgot to take my meds, and I said, "You guys, I need a good night's sleep. I need to take my meds." I sent them to sleep upstairs in the guest bedroom so that I could get a good night's sleep. Originally suggested that we all sleep together in the same bed together, but not the easiest person to sleep with. She rolls around, she punches, she kicks. We have a king size bed, and she typically sleeps on one side, and she'll end up on my side when we wake up.
Okay.
So I asked her, I'm like, no, please, I need a good night's sleep. If you guys can go upstairs and let me sleep.
I hate how matter of fact she is when she's essentially talking about sending her daughter upstairs to sleep with this guy. Now, something that really bothers me that I've not heard mention of is the lack of concern when she's talking about Maddie saying that she wanted them all to sleep downstairs together. If you're saying to your child, I want you to go upstairs and sleep with this grown-up man, this 37-year-old man, and your child is saying, can't we sleep downstairs all together? Meaning, I don't want to go upstairs alone with this man. Shouldn't that be a big enough wake-up call for you to realise that actually, yeah, that's a problem? Maddie was, if this is the truth, if Maddie did say, can't we sleep downstairs all together? Then that was Maddie screaming out for help. And Jen ignored it. It was all I for Jen. That whole part of that narrative was, I needed sleep. I wanted to get a good night's sleep. I didn't want to share my bed with my child. I wanted to sacrifice my child and send her upstairs with a grown-ass man so that I could get a decent night's sleep. And she has not processed the fact at all that her daughter was essentially saying, I don't want to do this. Either that or she's processed the fact and just gone, well, I don't give a damn.
I had asked Stefan to take her to school in the morning.
We'll go to Sunday. So Sunday you took your meds. What meds, if you don't mind me asking, what meds do you take? And like, how does it put you to sleep deep? Does it help you fall asleep, or does it help regulate you? What kind of happens when you take the meds?
So they do all of the above. They make me sleepy. They help me stay asleep, and they help me function. So I'm stable all day. They only work well if I've got a good night's sleep and if I've eaten with them the night before when I take them, or the night I take them.
They help me sleep. They help me stay asleep. They only work if I've had a good night's sleep. Okay, and it took you 24 hours to figure out that you hadn't taken them? Because, based on what you've just said, you should have noticed when you couldn't get to sleep. And let's be honest, from what we can see of Jen, from what we know of Jen, that nighttime ritual of having a snack before bed is not something that she's going to pass up on. And if that nighttime ritual of having a snack before bed happens to accompany taking medications, then really, is she ever going to miss her medications? I find it extremely doubtful.
The medication is called Geodon. Generic brand is called Zifrazidone. I took my meds, and then I told them to start getting ready for bed, to start heading upstairs and get ready because it was already almost 11 o'clock. It's past her bedtime.
And then she's straight back into that oh so very familiar narrative that she's so used to giving.
She needs to go to sleep. So I sent them upstairs. I think he may have come down at one point to pee before bed, and then he went back upstairs.
And you know this, Jen, because even though you should have been utterly exhausted from apparently having no sleep the night before because you forgot to take your meds, you were on your phone till after midnight. You didn't put it onto the charger till I think it was like 10 past 12. And yet, apparently you needed your sleep.
He uses my restroom because the roommates upstairs don't want to share a restroom with a male.
Okay.
Yeah, so he uses my restroom.
Honestly, that comes as no surprise to me. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's more than them just not wanting to share a restroom with a male, but that they probably had vibes about Stefan. Because from what we can tell, this is the first male that they've had to share space with in the apartment. So it's something that they would have established with Stefan being in the house. So they probably would have established it once he moved upstairs.
Sorry, where did I?
You're fine. Sunday night he came downstairs, maybe overnight, to use the restroom.
Yeah, and then he went back upstairs and they went to sleep. Or what I think they went to sleep.
Okay.
He went back upstairs and they went to sleep. Or I think they went to sleep. Another completely redundant comment and totally illogical. I mean, it is basically implied when she says that she had sent them both upstairs to sleep upstairs, that when he went back upstairs, they would have gone to sleep. Now, obviously, we know from what we've been told that Stefan's not much of a sleeper. So, whichever way you look at it, her saying, and then they went to sleep, doesn't work Either it's completely redundant because when you've sent people upstairs to bed, then you would expect that at some point in time they are going to go to sleep. Or if you know that Stefan's someone who doesn't sleep through the night, why would you say? And then they went to sleep. Basically, to me it sounds like something else occurred after Stefan had come downstairs. And I suspect it's got something to do with that message that was sent from Jen to Stefan saying she needs to go to bed now. Was Jen hearing noises of some sort from upstairs? Or was it, as some people have suggested, because a flatmate has arrived? But obviously, if she's sending a message at like 11:35, 15 minutes after Maddie's phone has gone to bed, or has gone upstairs, I should say, you're not going to send that message if the house is dead silent and it doesn't sound like there's something going on. So to me, her saying, well, I think they went to sleep, essentially, is admitting that something else was going on.
I went to sleep. I was woken up at some time. For the longest time, I've been saying he woke me up at 8 o'clock in the morning because I assumed he was taking her to school and getting ready for school. But in reality, I don't know what time he woke me up. The sun was out a little bit, it was still a little dark, and I was very sleepy when I got up. I was kind of drunk. But he came in to walk the dog, to put the leash on the dog and walk him.
Was the dog in the room with you?
Yes.
So did he wake you up on purpose, or was it just kind of like the causation of him opening the door and you realizing somebody was there?
Yeah, the causation of him
Okay.
putting the leash on the dog, because the way the dog reacted, he gets very nervous and will urinate if you put the leash on him too directly. You have to like be nice and talk to him. Yeah, he's a very he's a nervous dog, yeah.
So it seems like at this point in time, in terms of this narrative, every time she gets to this point, she seems to have forgotten that she's told detectives that she leaves her door slightly ajar because the cat sleeps in her room. We've also heard from the flatmates that the dog doesn't sleep in Jen's room. So there's multiple issues with this dog story. First of all, the dog apparently sleeps out in the lounge area, either next to the lounge or on the lounge. There's never been any mention of the dog ever sleeping in Jen's room. And yet, when Jen is giving this account, she never actually questions the fact that the dog has actually ended up in her room. It's not part of the story. None of it comes out in Stefan's story. So why the disparity? Why is it not something we hear from Stefan, but something we hear from Jen? And of course we know Stefan has never, Jen says this in a later interview, Stefan's never taken the dog out for a walk before. And yet she's never questioned this in any of these other interviews. It only comes out, I think, in the derivative use one. So what is actually the truth here? Because it just seems like there's so many irregularities here with this story. Did the dog actually go into Jen's room? And did this happen? Or is this just Jen's version of the made-up narrative? It's just really odd. Now, the other thing that's going on here is that, and we saw this in the previous interview too, after Stefan's timeline basically got shot to pieces by the detectives, we've seen Jen back off on every single aspect of the timeline that she's given. So previously, her account was that he came into her room a little bit after 8 o'clock. Now she's basically saying that she's got no idea when he went into her room. She doesn't want to actually commit to a time other than to say, well, it was getting light or something. So to me, what we're seeing here is that Jen is better at adapting her story than Stefan. When he is questioned on his timeline, he digs in his heels and he's like, well, I'm trying to help you, because he's never really had to face people questioning his stories before. Jen, on the other hand, adapts her stories, which makes me think that she is actually the more manipulative of the two and possibly the better liar of the two.
So, I got up to try to help him, and he said, "No, no, go back to sleep. I'm fine. I got this." And I said, "Are you sure?" He said, "Yeah." So I laid back down and went to sleep. Um, I heard noise in the kitchen, but I'm not sure who it could have been getting ready. But it could have been Stefan. It could have been any of my roommates. Um,
So she's done this a few times now, where she's giving the whole story, and then the story ends with her laying back down and going to sleep. And then she remembers the part about being asked if she heard anyone in the kitchen. So she's actually telling the story out of sequence. You get this pause, this and then she remembers that she's got to add this to her story. And of course, the adaptation that you get here is, whereas originally she started saying that she heard Maddie in the kitchen, now she's, I don't know who it was. It could have been Maddie getting ready, it could have been Stefan, it could have been one of the flatmates. So again, she's being very careful not to commit herself, not to lock anything in case it comes back and bites her on the arse. And I do think this comes back to the interviews that both of them did with Detective Tagler, because she really hammered them for facts and pulled them up on the things that were wrong. And like I've said before, I think Stefan and her discussed it, and whereas he dug his heels in, she's adapted.
I fell asleep again, and I didn't wake up, I think, until 9 o'clock in the morning.
Did you ever leave the bedroom in that time frame?
No.
So he came in, you were kind of awoken up based on him interacting with the dog, but you stayed in bed, you didn't leave the bedroom. So if you woke up at like 9, so you never
That morning.
Monday morning.
No.
So the last time you would have been Sunday evening?
Sunday.
Okay.
So, yeah, because Sunday evening bothers me a lot, I wanted to use the magnifier on her again. And two things I noticed was, as he was asking her if basically the last time she saw Maddie was Sunday evening, you could see her basically squeeze her lips together, like she was trying to avoid saying something, or there was something that she sort of didn't want to say. And you also get the beginning of the furrow in the brow. There's definitely something about Sunday evening that bothers Jen.
I'm sorry.
You're fine.
I want to see her again.
Take a minute, okay? While you take a minute, I have a comment I was going to ask you earlier. Has anybody reached out to you during the time that we've been investigating this to talk about Patty or anything else? Negative, positive, neutral?
My best friends have all been in contact with me just to try to help me.
Okay, I think that there was a genuine hint of emotion there. Not like real emotion, but you did see her brows furrow. Furrow just a little bit. But it appears to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but honestly, it looked like by the time she got that bit of paper towel up to her eyes, her face had completely cleared again. There was certainly no tears, and there was no snot. Any of you who followed the Watts case, I think it was a documentary where they were discussing it with the detectives or something, and one of the detectives pointed out that, you know, one of the dead giveaways in interviews when someone pretends that they're upset is basically if there's no snot, then they're not really crying. The fact that she did get over it so damn quickly, I mean, you don't just get a furrowed brow, break into tears, and before the tears have even got out of your eyes, stop. And then start going back to normal again. Not when your 13-year-old child is missing, you don't know where she is. She should be an emotional wreck, meaning that once the tears are triggered, they should be very hard to turn off.
There's like, you know, setting up Facebook groups, flyers,
No negative interactions with the public or anything? Nobody's like reached out with tips or accusations or anything like that?
not that I've seen.
Did
I've been
he-
avoiding social media because my family's telling me to not go on.
Would you?
And there it is. You have that affected voice. She's trying to sound that she's all emotional, but there's nothing that you can see in her face that points to her actually being emotional. She's already discarded and forgotten about that bit of paper towel, and basically there's no tears, there's no scrunched brow. It's just this stupid voice that she puts on, trying to act like she's emotional.
Would you be okay with our digital people looking at your phone to verify there's no stuff coming into socials, texts, things like that?
That's fine.
Do you have the phone?
Yeah.
What they'll do is they'll plug it in, they'll do a forensic download of it so they have the data. That way they can go through it and say, you know, we did receive things, we didn't receive things, here's the communications in and out, things like that, so we can verify that for you.
That's fine.
You have a password on it?
030288.
030288.
Is that a birthday?
My birthday.
It's your birthday?
Yeah.
Your birthday's tomorrow. Right?
Today's the 1st. I didn't even know. This is like the first. This is the worst birthday ever.
And there you have it, folks. That's what the real emotion looks like. Not only do you get this mega scrunched up brow, but her bottom lip suddenly sticks out 10 miles. And you can see that with that paper towel that she is actually blotting her eyes this time. She's actually pushing it into her eyes because she's got tears. And of course, as we all know, the emotion isn't over Maddie. The emotion is because it's her birthday tomorrow, and it's going to be her worst birthday ever. Okay, well, I was wrong. Did you see that? She basically escalated the emotion. You get her flopping sideways on the couch. You get that big sobbing noise. Wiping the eyes again. Scrunched up forehead. And then she's not got any reaction. And it just completely turns off. Her face just went straight back to normal. Like instantaneously. That was a complete put on. Here we were thinking she was feeling sorry for herself because, oh, it's going to be the worst birthday ever. No, maybe she was feeling a little bit sorry for herself. But there was no real... The woman actually worked herself into those tears, is all I can think. Because she just switched it off like she was switching off a light switch. Yeah, the scrunched brow was real. And there were definitely tears, and you definitely had the lip sticking out. But the way she turned that off so quickly, that to me says this is a behaviour that she's mastered in terms of working herself up to an emotional state, but because she's had to work herself up to it, she can't maintain it because she's not really feeling the emotion. And because she's not getting it, the detective wasn't feeding it. Had he stepped in and offered some words of sympathy or something, had he fed it in any way, she would have been able to maintain that emotion. But she got no response. And it just switched off. And then she's trying again to get it started, but, she missed her chance, really. It's like the kid in the supermarket that wants the chocolate bar. So they quickly work themselves up into this emotional reaction. Okay, they get the tears going. And it goes one of two ways. If the parent then reacts to it and says you can't have it, yada yada, they will build up on it. They'll keep crying. But if the parent just ignores it completely, they switch it off because it's not being fed. And that's exactly what has happened here with Jen.
That way they can get that going so we can get it back to you before we're out here. We don't keep it from you.
That was okay.
So you said about 9 o'clock on Monday you wake up.
Yeah. I wake up. I have a doctor's appointment. I leave sometime between 9:30 and 9:45.
And right on cue, they've directed her back to her well-rehearsed story. And because it is so well rehearsed, everything else is forgotten. The fact that she was supposed to be emotional is forgotten. And straight up, she sits upright again, and she's trying to put the voice on. But because she's doing this narrative, it's harder for her to do the voice.
Head over there. It's blood work appointment. The appointment's for 10:15, but they take a while to see me.
Where was your appointment at?
LabCorp. And do you want me to tell you exactly which one?
Sure.
Oh wait, I have it on my phone.
When we get it back, we'll go back to it.
Yes, let me tell you exactly which one I had my appointment at, so that you can tell that I'm telling the truth, which, going by the logic from what she used earlier in terms of, well, if you check that Stefan went to the vape store, you'll know that he's telling the truth. This is her version of, you can check that I went and got this blood appointment, and then you'll know that I'm telling the truth too. And of course, it also separates her from Stefan during that period of that morning. Now, you may have probably noticed, or you've probably had it pointed out to you in previous interviews anyway, the detective closer to the camera is starting to lose his patience with her. He clearly didn't buy any of that emotional crap. And what you're seeing now is his foot starting to do that rattlesnake thing, starting to flick up and down. And you can tell how frustrated he's getting with her by how fast that foot starts to go. These detectives aren't fooled by any of her crap.
It's, if you need to Google it, it's the LabCorp across the street from the Loop in Kissimmee.
Okay, got it.
Had my appointment. I finished there sometime between 11:15. Then I headed home. When I got home, Stefan was there. I had talked to him a little bit earlier while I was waiting for my blood work appointment, and he let me know, oh, I'm so sorry, I left my phone at home by accident. School, everything went great. She got up super early, got up really quick. She slept most of the way in the car. I asked her multiple times if she wanted McDonald's, but she said no.
Honestly, if you wanted to hear that part of the narrative, it wouldn't matter if you couldn't remember which interview to go to, because it's exactly the same every time Jen says it, and pretty much exactly the same every time Stefan says it. There's no variation. Once again, we have her claiming that Stefan was home when she got there. He wasn't. He had already left again to go to the vape store. As I've said before, I have no idea why they have continued to push that part of the narrative when it's not true. I've also got no idea why the detectives have never pulled them up on it. Unless, of course, all the cell tower stuff, all that cell tower information is from after these interviews. But it's mind-boggling that she can still describe him being there when she gets home from this appointment, even though he wasn't.
Because that was the plan, was that they were gonna stop at McDonald's that morning and go get breakfast.
Okay.
And he said that he had gone to the vape shop and they were closed and they didn't open. So he waited there for a while and left, and then said he was gonna go back later. When I saw him at the house, everything was normal. We were chatting, we were talking, he was acting normal. He was sitting in my computer chair just messing around on his phone. While we were hanging out, he mentioned something along the lines of, oh man, I've been avoiding this phone update for a really long time. I should probably update it now. And I said, do it. Don't avoid it. Just get it over with.
The way she relates this conversation about the phone update just sounds so fake. It really doesn't sound like a conversation that they've had. For starters, when does he say, oh man, ever, in any of his interviews? That sounds more like a Jen insert. But why do they both go to so much detail here? This whole part of it, the add-on, oh, he said, oh man, I've been meaning to putting this off, yada yada. Not necessary. She's overselling it. yet again. And here's the crazy thing with this narrative. She's giving this whole narrative, and she's skipped ahead to 12 o'clock when they were both there at the house, which is when he reset his phone. And she's completely blocked out the part where she got back before him and he arrived sometime after her because he was still at the vape shop. That whole section of reality is just evaporated, which means that they've basically condensed the timeline and missed out a chunk of the timeline there. But it seems like the detectives haven't caught up on this. And like I said, I think it's possibly because they didn't have all the cell tower data at the time when they were doing these interviews. Otherwise, they would know that actually Stefan arrived after Jen.
And he updates his phone and then tells me, oh my god, I don't know what button I just pressed, but I just factory reset my entire phone. And I said, how the hell does that happen? That gives you options now when you reset your phone? He goes, yeah, apparently I wasn't paying attention and I just pressed the button and it happened. And I said, oh, that's unfortunate, that sucks.
Now, someone made a comment in one of the recent videos that a lot of the narrative, the words she uses, make it sound like the whole story was written out first and then rehearsed. And the way she's telling it there sounds like a Year 7 student writing a little narrative. Either they're doing a recount about their weekend, or they're writing a little narrative, made up story, and they've been taught that, well, it makes it more interesting if you add a little bit of speech in there. And that's what she's done. Even the way her speech flows here sounds more like someone reading out a written narrative or a written retelling than someone actually remembering events.
Later on, he tells me he's going to go back out, and I think this is around 12:30, 1 o'clock.
Still on Monday?
Yes, still
Okay.
Monday. 12:30 in the afternoon, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. He tells me he's going to go back out. He's going to stop at a few gaming shops, and then he'll meet me at the house at 2:30 so we can get together.
So we know from the documents that part of the timeline is accurate in terms of him leaving again at 12:50. He was basically at the house for about 40-50 minutes and left again. So to me, that says that in this interview, when Jen actually gives times, real times, that it's likely that she actually is telling the truth at that point in time. And I mean, even just the tone of her voice sounds more natural there when she's talking about him heading out. Not so sure about where he was heading out to, whether that was just an add-on afterwards, but it definitely sounds genuine when she said that he headed back out again at around 1:45, 1:50. And we know it's truthful.
He left. I hung out in the house for a while. Was waiting for 2:30 to roll around. 2:30 rolls around, and I'm already calling Stefan, and He's not picking up his phone. 2:30 comes, I leave. About 10 minutes later, I get a phone call from him going, I just got back home. I left my phone home again. I'm so sorry. How long ago did you leave? And I said, about 10 minutes ago. He goes, I'm so sorry. I missed it. I really wanted to go with you. And I'm just like, it's fine.
Okay, so it frustrates me that not once did detectives ask her, is it normal for him to go with you to pick up Maddie? Not in any of the interviews did that question come up. But something that I actually hadn't picked up on before, and I suspect it's probably because this is the first time in ages that I've just gone through this interview front to back. And I think it must be after I've done the time. I must have looked at it before I did the timeline. Because he came in through the back gate 4 minutes after she left through the front gate. Now, I don't know how long it would take to get into the townhouse, but she left at 2:39. He came back in 4 minutes after that, and according to this, he rang her as soon as he got back into the house. And she's saying she'd been gone for 10 minutes already. Maybe it takes 5 minutes to get round to the townhouse, I don't know. But even still, that makes it not even 3 o'clock when he rang her. He would have rang her at 2:50 if we go by when she left, or a bit before 2:50. Meaning that she still had an hour and 15 minutes, because school doesn't get out till 4:04, to get into queue. Now, maybe she wouldn't be at the very, very front of the line, but she still would have been somewhere near the front of the line had she quickly turned around, gone and picked him up, and then headed back out. So this says a few things to me. First of all, it's possible that he may have rang her a bit later. But secondly, it was more important for her to be seen at the front of that car line than to have him with her when she went to pick, or supposedly pick, Maddie up. I can't imagine that she would have been too far back in the car line had she turned around and gone back. So, to me, it says that it was crucial for her to be at the front of the car line, to be visible. And the other thing that really bothers me with this story is both her and Stefan basically giving the impression that he apologised so profusely for being late back and missing going with her to pick up Maddie. Is it really such a disaster? It's not like there wasn't going to be anyone there to pick up Maddie. And according to Stefan, well, they just spoke on the phone while Jen was waiting for Maddie. Although according to Jen, we don't hear that, because Jen's version is that she basically rang Stefan after she got to Yolanda's place sometime after 4:35. But it just seems overkill for them both to be saying that he was so apologetic because he missed going with her to pick up Maddie. I mean, really? If she was the front of the line, then she would have been back at the townhouse by 4:30 anyway. So they were going to be separated for an hour and a half. And he was only going to miss out on half an hour's worth of time with Maddie. If we go into their little fantasy world, that is, because we know that none of that's real. I think it's well and truly fair to say that Chris was spot on when he said to Stefan that their story just wasn't a very good story.
I figured he wasn't going to make it because when I looked at the time when he left and said he was going to visit 3 shops, I didn't think he had enough time to visit them. He told me while he was gone that he got a flat tire somewhere on 182. The wheel just shredded and fell apart. So he was changing the tire, and it took him a really long time to do it. He said he hurt his thumb while changing the tire, like the frame or something slipped and something pinched his finger, and he ended up having to yank it out. And he said he hurt his finger.
So even before the detectives started coming at her over her lack of emotion and her lack of help and her supporting Stefan and everything, you can actually see that they've got her off kilter here. She's working her story so hard and they're not responding to them. She's tried with the tears, they didn't respond to that. Now she's just regurgitated the exact same flat tire story, finger caught in the jack, all that sort of thing. And she's expecting something from them. And there's just silence, and it stops her in her tracks. She doesn't know where to go from there. Now, I will point out that clearly Jen's never changed a tyre in her life, or she would be able to see through that story. Either that, or she just thinks the whole world is really dumb. But not only that, I would expect the parent of a missing child to jump on those silences. The detectives are asking them question after question, and they've not had an opportunity yet to really ask questions about the investigation, to ask the detectives if they're getting any closer to finding their daughter. But these silences just throw Jen for a loop because she doesn't know what to do. She never once thinks, oh, now while everything's quiet, I'll ask them this question. Because it's not something that has ever occurred to her.
I want to touch on something real quick. When you were calling him, he eventually tells you that he left his phone there. Did you hear the phone at the house?
No. If it was anywhere, it would have been upstairs and I wouldn't have heard it. It would have been in the guest
Do
bedroom.
you typically go upstairs?
Who, me?
Yes.
Only if I'm doing laundry.
Okay, explain this one to me. So, according to her narrative, her and Stefan, basically before he went out to go buy stuff, or look at stuff, or whatever, they were sitting in her room, talking. He was sitting at the computer desk. He accidentally reset his phone. They had a conversation about him resetting his phone. That was a bit after 12 o'clock. And then 40 minutes later, he leaves again. Actually, half an hour later, I just had a quick look. He basically reset his phone at 12:12 and then exits via rear gate at 12:44. So, apparently, after factory resetting his phone, he didn't spend time adding phone numbers or anything back in, even though after he got back he was able to ring Jen. And he apparently had Chris's phone number in there. So apparently in that half hour after resetting his phone, he went upstairs for some reason, even though Jen says that they were basically just hanging out downstairs together, and somehow left his phone upstairs before he went out. I call BS on that. There is no part of their narrative that would suggest him going upstairs at any point when the pair of them were hanging out together, is there? So they've caught her out in terms of, well, if you were ringing him and his phone was in the townhouse, how come you didn't hear it? Her response is, well, it was upstairs. How did it get upstairs? I can't see Stefan being the sort of person to just jog upstairs just for the fun of it. He didn't change his clothes. Well, not that time anyway. If he used the bathroom, he used the bathroom downstairs. I would imagine that the firearm was in the car the entire time that day. So I doubt that he went back upstairs to retrieve his firearm before going out. And I think someone actually suggested, and it's a really good suggestion, that perhaps the time when he claimed he went back for the clicker, he may have wigged out basically and gone back for his firearm because he realised he was driving around with a deceased body in his car. There is nothing, no reason for him in that half hour after he reset his phone to be going upstairs and leaving it upstairs. And like I said, he's at the very least, after resetting that phone, added Jen's contact details back in. And I would imagine he's probably got his father's contact details and put them back in as well. It's a shame that the detectives didn't think to ask Jen, so why did he go back upstairs?
That was all. I was just curious if you had heard the phone when you were trying to call him that day.
I didn't. So he tells me all that. I get off the phone with him. I'm waiting. I wait for about an hour and 10 minutes. 4:04, the bell rings, and I'm waiting. I'm the first in line. And she doesn't come out.
You were in your car?
I was in my car, in the car line, yeah.
Okay.
Now, I know that they did actually do a warrant for the camera footage from the school, and I would be really, really curious to see that camera footage, because I'm willing to bet she wasn't blocking anybody. I've shown images before of like a Google image view of the front of the school. There's plenty of room for cars to get around and get through. So this is just a whole load of BS. My thoughts in terms of the waiting only 6 minutes and then leaving after sitting there for an hour and a half is the school has a policy where cars in the pickup line have like a tag, and there are staff that monitor the pickup line, and they will actually use the tag to call over the child, to call the child to the car. So she did in one interview say something about them calling her up, calling Maddie over the PA or something, which makes me think that that is exactly what happened. And of course, at that point in time, she probably wasn't ready to put on her act. It was too early. Maybe the plan had never actually been for Stefan to go on the pickup with her. Maybe the plan was for him to stay at home and do a bit of laundry. and she was buying time for him so he could get that bit of laundry done before 911 was called, before police became involved and people went to the apartment.
At this point, it's been a few minutes. She should have been out by now because she's usually one of the first kids out. She knows I'm the front line, and I'm holding up the line behind me because there's kids getting in the cars behind and they're all waiting. They can't get around me, right? So I start calling her, forgetting that I have her phone on me. I had found her phone earlier that morning. She had left it at home, and I brought it with me because she does this often. She does leave her phone.
Where was the phone at in the house?
It was on top of the dresser in her bedroom.
Downstairs or I never been in your house.
Downstairs.
Okay.
So it seems like she's settled back on it being on the dresser as opposed to where she slipped up before and said that it was on the nightstand.
Just so you know, I have a 4-bedroom townhouse.
Okay.
The living room has a partition in it, a fake wall kind of thing. That's got her bedroom in it. That's got a bed, a dresser, and a desk on it. Does she sleep there? No. She'll hang out there. She'll use her computer and hang out there. That's her hangout spot. But she primarily sleeps with me every night in my bed.
And there it is again. She primarily sleeps with me every night in my bed, meaning that that's one of the arrangements, but there's also another regular arrangement in place. When you say primarily like that, it means you're talking about, well, there's a few ways this is done. The main version, probably the version when Stefan's not there, is that she sleeps with me in my bed. If she was telling the truth, I suspect the truth would be, based on so many things that she's said where she slips up, that, how does she say it? When it's a school night, she sends her upstairs to sleep with Stefan. Because something about alarms not waking him up or her up or who knows what.
That's because I know the roommates wake up super early in the morning. They're going to be in the kitchen. They're going to wake her up if she's sleeping out in the living room. So I don't.
So your bedroom downstairs, her makeshift bedroom downstairs, guest bedroom upstairs.
Yes.
Got it.
Her dresser. Her phone was on her dresser. When I found it, I was like, oh my god, she's left her phone again. That's great. I brought it with me to the school because I was just gonna yell at her and then just hand it to her so she could have something to do on our way home.
It's little things like that that reveal quite a bit about Jen, isn't it? She was going to yell at Maddie for forgetting her phone. Now, let's just pretend that Jen isn't in on any of this and she genuinely knows nothing, found Maddie's phone sitting on her dresser, or maybe on her nightstand, depending on which version she gives. Why would you yell at your child for forgetting their phone? This particular school has a policy where if the kids have their phones out during the day, the phone is taken from them. The phone is not allowed to be out at school. So it's not like it's a case of she should have had her phone just in case I needed to contact her for anything. And of course, you know, the preference with schools is that parents contact the office, not the child, if there's a problem. Why does it matter to Jen so much about Maddie forgetting her phone to the point that she would have to yell at her for doing so? Sure, if she took her phone to school and left it sitting in the school library where it maybe got lost permanently, or could possibly, potentially get lost permanently, then you could yell at your child for forgetting their phone. Even then, I think that's overkill, just making them wait and suffer the anxiety of waiting till the following day to find out if their phone has been handed in, and making them wait till you can actually manage to buy them a new phone, is more than enough punishment. But why yell at your child for forgetting their phone? Sounds to me like maybe Jen did do a lot of yelling, and unnecessarily so, which fits with what has been said by the counsellor in terms of conversations that she had with Maddie.
On our way home. 4:10 rolls around and she's still not out, or 4:09, and then at this point I'm feeling the pressure from the cars behind me. I'm like, okay, they're all full, they're all waiting for me to leave, and she's not here yet. So I take off. And
Seriously, it looks bad enough that she only waited till 4:10, and now she's going to revise the timeline to 4:09, meaning that according to that timeline she only waited 5 minutes for Maddie to get out to the car. It drives me nuts hearing her say this. The only reason that you would sit there for 5 minutes after school has got out and then leave would be if you knew that your child wasn't coming out. Because there are so many reasons that could have seen her delayed. Now, something that I'm kind of curious about, and which I don't think anyone has specifically asked, I'd like to know what time or how much after the kids who walk and the kids who are picked up, the bus kids are sent out to the buses. Because Jen claims that she contacted Maddie's friends to find out, or she contacted her best friend to find out if Maddie was with her. But here's the thing, if she's at the front of the line, did she leave before the bus kids came out? Because if she was still there when the bus kids came out, she would have seen Maddie's friends come out without Maddie, right? She knows what Maddie's friends look like. Presumably, if you are at the front of the line and the kids are coming out, you're sitting there, you're watching for your kids, so you're going to notice the other kids that come out. But apparently, either the bus kids came out after 4:10, or she just forgot what Maddie's best friend looks like. And, I mean, honestly, the only reason I can see for any of the bus kids in particular not having come out by 4:10 would be if there was a bit of a, I guess you could say, a shuttle system with the buses, like what happens here in some regional towns in Australia, where they have limited bus services. So there'll be, for some areas, there might be a late bus, where the bus that takes those kids has to do a local run first and then comes and picks up the late bus kids, and that's a little bit further out. So I don't know, but I can't imagine such a large school in a well-populated area having that kind of issue. So to me, I would expect that the bus kids would have been out by the time Jen left. Now, obviously, I'm coming at this from an Australian perspective, so I would greatly appreciate your input on that. Let me know, just how the bus system works there in terms of how quickly the bus kids would get out of school and onto buses at the end of the day.
I'm thinking, maybe I missed her. Maybe I forgot to tell her I was picking her up from school today, because I don't know if she knew that I wasn't working. I don't know if she knew if I was off. So I asked, I don't know if I told her that I was going to get her.
Oops, she forgot the narrative there, didn't she? She's talking about, I don't know if I told her if I had that I had the day off. So I asked, and then she's like, I don't know if I asked. I don't know who she was going to say that she had asked, and I wonder if that was going to be the whole. I asked her best friend if she was with her or if she'd seen her, and then she realised that didn't fit into the narrative at that point in time, and she was getting ahead of herself, or whether I don't know. I can't think of what other possibilities are there. I think she just started getting her narrative out of order and then realised, hang on, no, that's not what I was saying originally. Because who else would she ask? We know that she didn't exactly ring up Yolanda and go, hey, I'm sitting here at the school. Do you know if Maddie was expecting to come to your office? Or can you ring me if Maddie turns up? It's just another one of those mysterious slips from Jen. And I think all it is that she got out of sync with her narrative. Because then she just got all flustered, didn't she? She lost her place in the story.
So I left thinking maybe she walked, that's pretty close to school. If I can't pick her up at school, that's where I tell her to go. I drove the path she would have walked. I didn't see her. I got to the office. She goes, no, it's a little too early. And I said, okay. Let me go drive back down and wait along the path she would walk and just wait. And I parked and I waited.
Yep, she just sat on the side of the road because she didn't want to go back to her mother's office too early. Because obviously they need a bit of extra time before someone calls 911. She didn't want to alert her family to the fact that something was wrong at that point in time. I mean, logically, she has just said, I drove back down the track that she uses, meaning that clearly there's only one route that Maddie would take between the school and Yolanda's office. So logically, you would drive back along that route until you reached the school. At which point, you would go and park up and go inside, which you probably should have done before you left the school in the first place. But, I mean, any half-wit would think that logically, okay, now I didn't see her come out of the school. I must have left too early because she's not at my mother's office and she's not on the route from my mother's office to the school, meaning that she can't have come out of the school before I left. So if I backtrack to the school and I don't see her, then maybe she's still inside the school and maybe I should be worried about that. But no, what does Jen do? Just sits on the side of the road for half an hour. Finally goes back to Yolanda's office half an hour after Maddie should have come out of school. She got back to Yolanda's office at 4:35, which is convenient because the school office closes at 4:30. Did she wait for the school office to be closed? Was she trying to buy more time that way?
I waited. I'm not sure how long I waited. Maybe somewhere between 5 to 10 minutes. She still wasn't there, and I looked at the time, and I'm like, okay, she should be back at my mom's office by now. Maybe she took a different path and I didn't see. So I went, no, she's still not here. And I'm like, that's really strange. So I called. I don't know if I text or I called. I I think I texted her. And I asked, hey, or I called her. I asked, um, and she said, no, she didn't make it to first or second period. And I said, what do you mean? She was dropped off close to the school. She should have been in school. She goes, no, she didn't make it to first, second period. I said, please check with the rest of your friends, see if she made it to any of her other periods.
Once again, really, really dumb narrative. First of all, how many times can she say, didn't make it? She didn't make it to first or second period. Can you check with her other friends to see if she made it to any other periods? Now, why would you jump to that conclusion? Does the child have a habit of playing hooky? This child who suffers from anxiety and needs her friends to go with her when she goes to the nurse? And you think that she's going to miss the first couple of lessons and then suddenly turn up later? It's not logical. Either this woman knows absolutely nothing about her daughter, or it's just a really, really, really bad story. To me, the didn't make it is a bit of a giveaway, because I would expect the answer to be more along the lines of, well, no, she wasn't in any classes. She wasn't there. I didn't see her at school. She wasn't in any classes. You know, that sort of thing. Not, she didn't make it. That's what you say, well, you know what we think about that.
At some point in this, I emailed one of her teachers asking, actually emailed a few of her teachers and two of them responded. One of them said, no, she did not make it to class, and I checked her attendance for the rest of the day. She wasn't in school at all. Like, he sent me a screenshot of like her attendance, and it said 0, 0, 0.
You still have that on the phone?
Yes.
Okay.
It makes sense, and it's quite sickening, that he would be the one to respond, because it sounds like he got home and the first thing he did was hop on his computer. And we know why that scumbag was hopping on his computer the moment he got home.
If you need to know what app, I'll tell you what app. It's a special school app.
Got it.
He said she was missing all day. And at this point, I start to panic and freak out because that can't be the case. She was dropped off.
Again, more leakage from Jen, and I actually haven't heard anyone comment on this before. But she says that the teacher said Maddie was missing all day. Now, if you've contacted Maddie's teacher to say, look, I've tried to pick her up after school, I haven't seen her anywhere, was she in your class? Then the response you would expect would be, she was absent all day. Not she was missing all day, because she wasn't necessarily missing. She was absent, she was not in class. You don't presume that because a child is not in class that they're missing. You just simply say the child is absent. So, yet again, Jen shows herself up.
I had to go check her attendance at school, but the office had closed already. The lights were off. I could see a student sitting in there in the darkness, but I couldn't see any of the administrators or anybody in the office. Lights were off, everything was closed. They wouldn't allow me in. I think at this point the teacher had responded to me and told me she didn't make it to school at all.
Again, more leakage from Jen. The teacher isn't necessarily going to presume that because she was absent from classes that she hadn't made it to school at some point in time. Once again, the response would be, no, she was absent from all her classes. He's not going to say she didn't make it to school at all. Because you've got a parent saying that this child was dropped off at the school. So the presumption there is going to be that the child was at school somehow, but didn't attend classes. You're not going to say she never made it to school. Or, any variation of that.
I start having like a freak out panic attack.
Are you still just you at this point? Is it you and Stefan?
It's me and my sister, and I want to say one of them is Catherine. I start panicking, and I think at this point I call Stefan and I tell him, hey, because she didn't make it. She's not.
So that's where Jen and Stefan's version differ quite dramatically. According to Stefan, they were on the phone while Jen was waiting in the car line, and Jen was like, while she was in the car line, said to him, "Oh, she hasn't come out. Panic, panic." This version, she started to panic after contacting the best friend, after contacting the teachers, and then she contacted Stefan. Stefan, who was the one that was supposed to have dropped Maddie off at school, who should have been the first contact if you actually believed that Maddie had been dropped off at school. Now, what she's leaving out of the narrative here is she's trying to give the impression that this all occurred before the 911 call was made, but we all know that this was after the 911 call. And she's claiming that these calls that she made caused her to panic and caused her to make the 911 call. Well, your story isn't fitting at all, Jen. And again, there's nothing in her voice to indicate that she actually was panicked at any point in time, and she's not describing any sort of physical reactions to accompany this panic that she was feeling.
She's absent today. There's no attendance of her at all today. I'm like, right now, and he said, okay, I'll be there. And he came to the office, and there for like 3 hours, I think. Um, Eventually, I contact one of my friends whose husband works or ex-husband works for OCP or for you guys.
Orange County Sheriff's Office?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I messaged him and I talked to him and I asked him what I should be doing because you guys aren't responding quick enough.
Would you know his name? Where he works?
Yes. Nick Mann.
Okay.
Or Mahon. Not
Do you
sure.
know what he does here?
I think he works for SWAT.
Okay.
Sure.
Figure it out.
Yeah.
He tell you to wait.
I can't remember anymore. I think he let us know that there were other kids missing in the area, which is why you guys weren't responding quick enough. I think an 8 and a 9-year-old had gone missing around the same time too. In a playground, they forgot to tell. They didn't tell their mom they were going to the playground or something like that. So all the cops were over there on that side of Hunters Creek.
Okay, I get the fact that they were dealing with other children who were missing at the point in time, but you can't tell me that the entire police force was out searching for those 2 missing kids. It should be a priority. Maybe because of her age, and we see this happen so often, apparently once they're about 13, it becomes less important to rush checking out checking out these reports of a missing child. There seems to be a presumption that the child is a runaway. And I think that's something that needs to change, because so often you hear, oh, well, the child is a runaway. Well, there's so many bad things that happen to children, not just in the United States, but in Australia and every other country, that it shouldn't be just presumed that the child is a runaway until you have solid evidence that the child is actually a runaway. Every disappearance should be treated with urgency. And the fact that it did take 2 hours, nearly 3 hours, for them to actually get to the office, and that only occurred after Stephanie's ex-boyfriend basically went and rounded them up, is unacceptable. The first 24 hours when a child goes missing are crucial. So yes, I'm going to go with Jen on this. They were taking too long to respond. Now, I find it curious that she's claiming to have, and this is the only time I think that we hear this, where she claims to have contacted her friend who's a police officer and asked him what to do, but then she's not entirely sure what he said. My thoughts on that are that this was yet again something that one of her family members did, and she's claiming that she did it to make it sound like she did something rather than just sit on her ass for 2 hours. Because, I mean, she didn't take the initiative to call 911, so why would she take the initiative to call someone she knows to find out why things are being slow? She doesn't mention here that there were actually 3 911 calls, none of which were made by her. So there's no indication that she was feeling the urgency of the matter. So I'm pretty certain that that phone call, if it occurred, was a family member doing it. Hence the reason she has no idea what the conversation actually was.
My sister's boyfriend, ex-boyfriend, whatever he is, thought it would be a good idea to go to the park and talk to a cop there and see if he could bring a cop back, and that's what he did.
Okay.
And then at that point, that's when the cop started asking us questions, taking a report.
Okay, so shout out to this guy, whoever he is, that actually took the initiative and drove to the park and got the officers to come back with him. And we know that occurred because we actually see it on the officers' body-worn cameras. How ironic that this guy isn't family, he isn't even dating family anymore. And yet he did more than Jen or Stefan in that initial period of time.
Interviewing me, they interviewed Stefan. They asked Stefan to take them back to the location where he dropped them off, and he showed them wherever he dropped her off. They were looking for cameras along the path, and I don't think they found any cameras along the way to see if there was any video recordings. I think.
Did Stefan go with them in their patrol cars, or did he drive himself and they followed? How did that work?
I think he went with them in the patrol car.
Okay, put yourself in her position. your child is missing, your partner, supposedly, or your ex-partner, your ex-boyfriend, supposedly dropped her off at a particular location, not at the school. Wouldn't you want to know that exact location? She's like, Stefan took them and showed them where he dropped her off, wherever that is. This interview is on the 1st of March. This isn't like 5 minutes after they've reported Maddie missing. This is several days after they've had Maddie missing. And apparently she's not had that conversation with Stefan in terms of, tell me exactly where you dropped her off. She's not demanded that he take her and show her, because otherwise she would have visuals to describe to the detectives. Instead, it's just kind of wherever he dropped her off. Very dismissive, somewhere out there. He dropped her off somewhere out there. Don't know, don't really care. My child's missing, but I don't care where she was dropped off. That could be a major clue as to what happened to her, where she's at. But hey, it's just somewhere out there, wherever it is. Nothing is right with this woman. Now, I made a comment in one of the recent videos the other day where I thought she might have been a sociopath. Obviously, I am not a mental health professional, so I can't really make that call. But when I hear her saying stuff like this, and being so matter-of-fact, showing no emotion, I wonder if that is a possibility.
Then they came back. And then that's it. Everything was done.
That's it. Everything was done. Yes, we've done the act. We put on our performance for the day. We contacted police. That's it. We finished our performance. Because what parent, when they've just reported their child missing, is going to say, after they've spoken to police and everything, that's it, everything was done? That should be the very beginning. The moment when everything kicks into gear and you start doing whatever you can to find your child. You don't go home and get stoned. Like, oh, yay, we made it through the day. Not our problem now. Let's just relax. Hearing her say it like that does make me think that she was definitely in on it. They both had their roles to play for the day. And having done so, everything was done. They were finished and they could go home and kick back.
The cops were done. We were done.
What time? You remember what time that was on Monday?
It was after dark. It was like 8 o'clock.
What did you guys go do after that?
We were in separate cars, me and Stefan.
Okay.
I ugly cried on the way home. I shouldn't have been driving. But I ugly cried on the way home and I went straight home.
She's supposedly describing being in a state that was like full-on tears, ugly cry, supposedly, can't breathe, can't see the road. And yet she still has this level tone to her voice. She should be showing some sort of emotional reaction to this experience that she is relaying. And she should be describing it as more than just, I ugly cried, I probably shouldn't have been driving, but I did. You, you would expect, again, to hear a description of the physical reaction. You know, like I said, I ugly cried. I was crying so hard that I could barely see the road. I was crying so hard that I thought that I felt like I couldn't breathe. None of that stuff. Just very matter of fact, I ugly cried. And she says this about Stefan at one point too, and we've seen the interview where she's referring to it, and we know that that was just a complete, utter fake ass attempt at crying. And surely she knows him well enough to have known that. So I don't buy this at all.
And then the first thing I did was call Fox 35 News to see if we can air some missing children information out there.
Okay, I tend to believe the version where she claims that it was her family who contacted all the news stations. Because that makes more sense to me. I can't see her actually doing that. Not only that, had she done it, you would think she would have mentioned it in earlier interviews. But instead, like I said, we've heard her talk about the family contacting the news stations. She claims that she got up early the next morning to make phone calls, which I have questions about. And now she's claiming that when they went back to the townhouse, even though on other times she said, well, there was nothing else to do, now she's claiming that they went back to the townhouse and she called Fox News. Yeah, I call BS on that one.
You say ugly crying, just overly emotional tears, makeup running, or is there what is your meaning of ugly crying?
Sobbing where I couldn't see the road and I shouldn't have been driving, I was swerving.
Makes sense.
The fact that he had to prompt her to get that out of her, and all she can give him is, sobbing so hard I couldn't see the road, and claims that she was swerving. Now, I think we've all had times when we found ourselves crying while we've been driving for some reason, or a lot of us had. It doesn't cause you to swerve around on the road. For certainly the times that it's occurred to me, I've never found myself swerving all over the road. In fact, it tends to be the opposite. You know that you can't see the road that well, so you're focusing even harder on making sure that you drive a straight line. Again, I call BS on Jen's story.
Did Fox 35 come out to your house, or what was their response?
They responded the following day. I think we did a Zoom video interview.
Did Stefan follow you home?
I don't know if he followed me, but he drove home, yeah.
I mean, was it within a reasonable time of when you got there?
Yes.
Okay.
So the cell phone data does actually show them driving home pretty much in convoy. They basically both drove home at the same time, just in separate cars.
Drove home, we waited there, we didn't know what to do. I stayed up late. I think I called Fox 35.
We came home, we didn't know what to do. Did it occur to you to go out looking? did it occur to you to say, okay, let's now go out in one car to the location where you said you dropped Maddie off because I want to see that location? And she adds in the Fox News again, but as an afterthought. And she's like, I think I rang Fox 40 News. I don't know what she was going to say with I think. I think she was probably going to say, I think my family rang Fox 40. But, of course, it's all about Jen. Jen wants to be the hero here, so she's going to claim that she rang Fox 40 News. I doubt that very much because it seems that they must have got pretty busy when they got home, because by the time the officers arrived at midnight, less than 3 hours later, they were toasted. So I'd say they started on that the moment they got in the door, which again makes it even less likely that they contacted Fox 40.
I think I had to eventually eat and take my medication. He told me he was going to go out cruising that night to go look for her. And I said, I even questioned that. I asked him, are you sure it's a good idea? You should probably sit tight. Let's just wait to see if she comes home.
Eventually you had to eat and take your meds. Which meds were they, Jen? Eventually? Because, well, it appears that you had taken some sort of meds before before the officers turned up. But I doubt they were your regular meds. And why? Just why would you question why someone going out to search for your daughter? Oh, should you do that? What if she comes home? Well, duh, Jen, if she comes home, you're there because you're too much of a slug to actually get off your ass and go searching yourself. Your sleep is more important to you than your daughter. So if by some bizarre chance she manages to come across someone who's going to give her a lift home, even though you've claimed that she doesn't know how to get home, then you're there. So's your two flatmates. I suspect that the reason this part of the story is just so unbelievable and also doesn't necessarily stay the same is because she doesn't want to admit to the fact that they went home and weren't doing anything remotely close to worrying about Maddie.
And he said he was going to take a drive out. I had completely forgotten about him wanting to take the drive or that he actually did it. And it wasn't confirmed to me until the following day where agents came to the house and we sat in the car for a good amount of time and I noticed the chair was adjusted. And I said, did you drive my car? And he said, yeah, remember I said I was going out last night to... That's right, you did say that.
Someone tells you they're going to go out looking for your missing child. Your first reaction is to ask them if it's a good idea. So you've clearly had a conversation about the matter, not just a simple passing comment of, I might go out and look for her tonight. And yet you somehow forget. No parent is going to forget that someone said they were going to go look for their child for them. That's just not human.
Can he tell you where he looked?
I think he said up and down 192 and I said, why there? And he's like, I don't know, I'm just looking. I was just trying to look anywhere. And I'm just like, okay.
Why there? Well, why not there? And here's a thought, Jen. If he said to you, I'm going to go out looking, instead of saying, that's a bad idea, maybe you could have suggested a few locations that you thought he could look, so that instead of sounding like an ungrateful spud the following day and say, why did you look there? You could start with, did you go out looking for Maddie in the end? Where did you go? Did you see anything of interest? Did you get out of the car? All these questions that would have been good questions to ask. Not, why there?
Did he say if he found anything or talked to anybody, or just roamed?
Yeah, roamed.
When you were getting ready for bed, you were tired, emotional. Were you falling asleep when he left, or were you already asleep when he left?
I was already asleep when he left.
Okay. Did you sleep downstairs?
Yeah.
In your bedroom?
Yes.
When you woke up, was he already awake, or was he still sleeping?
He was asleep in his bedroom upstairs.
The guest bedroom?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you take your medication that night?
I did.
Of course you did, Jen, because you never do actually miss your medication, do you? The only time your medication is being effective, I suspect, is when you've had too much other medication. I really don't think that was the case on the Sunday night. I think that was just one big lie. Now, that's a convenient spot to stop at, because then they start talking about the Tuesday and what they did on the Tuesday. So, and it is already, 2.25 hours long, this video. I apologise for the delays with getting this out. It has been slight mayhem here with me babysitting an extra pup in the house. Things just reached a point yesterday afternoon where there was just too much chaos for me to even attempt to continue working on this video. So I gave it up as a bad joke and went and watched the Rick Allen interviews and phone calls, which are interesting. Definitely worth going to. I did actually post a community post where I linked to Tom Webster's video with all that on it, if you are interested. So there's a lot there. I think the big standout for me so far is the lack of emotion from Jen. And for people who want to say that's because of her medications, I strongly disagree, because we do see instances when reactions are triggered. Just not anything to do with Maddie. So on that note, I will leave it there. Thank you for listening. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe. Also, please hit the like button and leave a comment below. I know I am way behind with answering comments. I am doing my best to try and catch up. And I will make sure that I do catch up. So thank you. And I'll catch you in the next one.
Give a